What's up, y'all? Welcome to Three Brothers and a Shot of Milk. And today we're going back in time, man. We are time traveling to the past to talk about maybe one of the best sequels ever made, arguably, maybe one of the best action sci-fi movies ever made. Hey, maybe top 10 best movies ever made. I don't know. We're going to see if this thing holds up. We're talking about James Cameron's Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Judgment Day.
Yes. Guys, we don't need to do none of that crazy recap or spoiler-free review. This movie's been up for 30 years, and if you haven't seen it,
I'd like to hear the synopsis.
Synopsis off the top of my head. Here we go. In 1990 something, young John Connor is living his in 1997. Young John Connor is living his life when his day is interrupted by a Terminator out to kill him. As he's trying to the Terminator, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, comes back and starts to save him, and we'll see what happens.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Did you guys see this movie in theaters?
No.
Yeah.
No?
I didn't see this one in theaters.
I saw it on a laser disc.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Remember Charlene? She had it on laser
disc. It looked like a big record, but shiny.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one in person. Wow.
Yeah, bro.
Wow. So my dad got the videotape back when it went to video.
So this movie, there used to be. So remember, Lawrence, remember when I used to live in the apartment? Look, Rich, you may too. I don't know if you probably went to my apartment when we were younger. No.
Oh yeah. Not your apartment. Wait.
No, not my apartment, but when my apartment where I grew up.
Yeah, but yeah.
Two girls who should not be named because I'm going to drop some sensitive information.
Wow.
They were making fun of me, saying I was like a baby and blah blah blah. And I specifically remember I lied to them saying I saw this movie. So these two stupid girls knocked on my door. My dad answered the door. My dad answered the door, and they asked my dad, "Did Chris see Terminator 2?" And then my dad's like, "No." And then I look stupid. Then my dad goes to me, "I didn't know you want to see it. Do you want to see it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So then he took me and my friend Anthony to see it that day, and it was awesome. Fast forward to like 10 years in the future. I'm at the doctor with my girlfriend at the time. That same stupid girl from my complex is crying in the doctor's office because she had an STD. Serves you right.
Wow.
I kind of don't understand this story, and I'm not even sure what to say.
Enjoy that chlamydia, Susan.
Remember when you made fun of me 10 years ago about Terminator 2? Now it burns when you pee.
Oh man!
I don't even know what to say.
I'm not petty, but
Did anyone see the end of this story coming?
So good.
Well, you've been holding that for quite some time, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We all have an emotional connection to this film.
Wow.
Well. Okay,
not to make fun of STDs or
Susan
or Susan,
but
whatever
that
name
serves you right, Susan.
Serves you right.
I guess the moral of the story is you really shouldn't make fun of people at any age, and eventually, life and karma is going to catch up to you.
Eventually, yep. Eventually, one person will see Terminator 2 and one person's going to get STD.
You can decide which person you want to be.
What side are you on?
What side of history do you fall on?
Wow. Well, on that note.
Well, so guys, this joint opens up with freaking okay. The effects are amazing here. Like they hold when we open up on the battlefield in the future. I'm like, it wouldn't take much to make this feel like a 2022 film. And the fact that they use as much practical effects as possible makes it hold up.
But this is what James Cameron is so good at. Like, even when you listen to him talk about making Terminator in the first place, he waited for CGI and technology to make sense for him to feel comfortable making the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Cameron is someone who throughout his career has always paused a thing to safeguard the integrity of a thing so it might have a chance to hold up later in life.
Dude, and
Which is
you
why-
see that with Avatar. Like, he waited decades to do Avatar 1 because he's like, we don't have the technology for it. I was just floored by how dope it looked. Like it looked how I remembered seeing it as a kid. You know, sometimes you look back at the thing you saw as a kid and you're like,
RoboCop.
I
Have
see
you
the
gone back to
strings.
RoboCop?
I have not gone back to RoboCop.
Oh man,
It just looks so good. And then you know, you have Linda Hamilton doing the voiceover.
she's jacked.
Okay, when you look at Terminator 1, which is great, but it's inside of its greatness, it's kind of a typical horror film. Big bad monster, unstoppable force chasing this kind of virtuous, you know, the kind of virgin type of girl you usually see in these horror films, and they wind up winning. To have her become this in the sequel is like unheard of. You never saw that before.
I
You
remember
never saw that
as a kid watching her doing an interview about the Terminator movie T2 when it came out, and she was talking about the training she did in preparation for the role. And if you watch the movie, she does a pump action shotgun with one hand. She jacks it and shoots it. And she was talking about how that was such a challenging thing to have to learn to do with one hand, and how gratifying it was to finally be able to do it.
dude. I mean, and I mean, there's some shots where I know she had a stunt double, but there's like she's taking the hits too, especially in the mental institution. Like, I was looking for the cut to see, like, is she taking the fall on that marble floor or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
She does, and so we're brought in. We see freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger touchdown, and I was floored by this man's acting because I was thinking about it. I'm like, it's fine. He's not doing the robot thing. But when he steals the motorcycle, you know, the motorcycle goes in the club and does all that stuff, I'm like, he takes the glasses, puts them on, has a shotgun, grabs the handle of the motorcycle. Every move he does is so direct and deliberate. It could not have a where's my keys moment. His eyebrows couldn't go up as he thinks. He couldn't even blink when he wasn't supposed to. That level of detail in his performance, I was just watching it like it was like choreography. It was amazing.
I was watching an interview with Schwarzenegger recently. I mean, I think it was a couple years ago. He was talking about all the iconic movies he'd been in and the roles he played, and he was talking about how he only got cast in the Conan movie because he had this crazy accent that made him uncastable for anything else. And because the Conan movie went over and he had that crazy accent that was kind of robotic, was the only reason he got cast in the Terminator movie. And because the Terminator movie was so successful, he suddenly had a career.
Interesting.
But he's so good in the Terminator movie. It's funny how minimalistic it actually is, and the humor is hysterical because he's not playing the joke. It's just neutral, kind of deadpan.
But that takes such, like, what's the word I'm looking for? That takes discipline to not lean in, to not even
to overact it, right? To
not even for him, not even overact it. For him to act it, like he can't even follow a natural instinct that, like, you have a response. He can't even go with that. You know, we hear him go, hasta la vista, baby. And we sound here, it's funny, but on set, it's like, I'm responding to this kid who's giving me all the emotional life in the world, and I can't actually respond to him. That's just brilliant right there to me.
It's one of the things that really holds up with it, you know?
Which they make fun of in the later sequels with him. Like, he has a thing where in the later one where he smiles and it looks funny. Like, they start making fun of the fact he's a robot.
They try and recapture this magic a few times after, but
a lot of times
they can't.
The closest was the most recent one.
I didn't see it.
They finally picked this. They picked this story back up with the same.
Oh yes, they kind of erased Terminator 3.
Well, that was the first one James Cameron came back for. He had nothing to do with the other movies or he produced that one.
Yeah, it's probably why the tone felt No, it wasn't. Cameron didn't direct it, but I think he did
He
produce it.
and he wrote
Yeah.
it. He
Who
wrote
was
that
the?
one. It was Miller or something. Something
Yeah.
Miller. But I think even Cameron said that movie could have used another draft. He said it still wasn't where it should have been, and they were kind of rewriting stuff on the spot. And I think it's because Terminator 2 Judgment Day finished it.
It
Like
did.
it finished it. There's no reason to really
Well,
go back.
the reason was
Money.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Well, that's why Schwarzenegger said that I'm not going to do any more Terminator movies without James Cameron. James Cameron told him, take the money. I appreciate your loyalty. Just take the money.
Oh, it's funny. It wasn't even originally Cameron's film.
No?
He didn't do Terminator 1, did he?
Oh, yeah.
He did do Terminator 1. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Wait, what movie did
You're thinking
Cameron
Aliens.
I am
You're thinking
thinking
Alien and Aliens.
Cameron
Yeah.
took over for the Aliens movie. But that's what I was saying. Like, Cameron waited for the technology to catch up so he could do Terminator 2. He'd been sitting on that script for a decade.
Right.
So talking about Terminator 2, so we've been getting nostalgic past couple of weeks because we've lost a lot. We lost childhood people, childhood like figures and heroes. This movie is a childhood staple. So this is an R-rated movie, but I had the toys. Did you guys have the toys?
Yes. I had one of them. Yeah, I did.
So this movie falls into like a weird category. Like, it's not for kids, but there was a ton of Terminator toys and Terminator content. And
that's the 80s and 90s, bro. That's why you had Predator toys and Rambo toys and RoboCop toys.
And you know what's funny? So when we have a chat that we talk about, what we're gonna do, and Jack suggested that we do a throwback, and we decided to watch this. I was like, I'll glance through it because I've seen it. It's one of my favorite movies. I've seen it so many times. But I was like, you know what? I'm doing stuff this morning. Let me just put it on in the background. And I'm watching it. Yeah. And Sebastian ends up watching it. And he is riveted and watches it, stays shut, and watches it to the end. And every line that was like a pop culture hit, I'll be back, hasta la vista, all that stuff.
Hit.
He's repeating it. And it's funny because he has no context of how iconic those lines were at the time. But because he's experienced what we experienced back then, he's experiencing it right now.
Well, it wasn't iconic for us the first time we heard it.
It wasn't, but it triggered whatever it triggered in pop cultures in all of our brains. It still triggers in kids right now because he was running around saying "Hasta la vista, baby" and pretending to shoot me because I was a T-1000.
You know what's funny about that? Schwarzenegger actually talks about that in the interview too. He was talking about how I'll Be Back. He tried to petition Cameron to turn the line in the original Terminator movie to "I will be back." He said, "I'm a robot. I should say I will be back. I shouldn't be contracting." And Cameron said, "Just do it the way I wrote it, please." And he said he was so surprised that turned into one of the most quotable lines in movie history. "I'll be back."
That's the thing when it comes to art. It's like sometimes it's not the logical thing. Sometimes it's the thing that just hits the emotional chord, that has the right musicality to it. But Schwarzenegger's right. He should say, "I will be back." But Cameron's like, "You're right.
But trust it.
But play the music, baby. This is jazz. It's not always going to go where it's supposed to go."
There's so much stuff. "Come with me if you want to live." There's
that line hit. Well, okay, let's go back because that line hits.
Also, it's a throwback from the original.
Well, the dude,
because Reese says it to her.
Reese says it, and it's almost like he was programmed. I don't know. There's a lot of good questions I have here. I wish that this movie had no marketing. Like, I wish there was no trailer to it, because if it had no marketing or no trailer,
you wouldn't have known.
When John Connor's in the mall and you have the two Terminators on either side, you wouldn't know which one was there to save him without the marketing.
I was thinking that when I was watching it this time too. I was like, does it set it up? And it sets it up real ambiguous right up until that point.
She says in the voiceover, one was sent to save him and one was sent to kill him. And you don't know which one. So if you came off of Terminator 1 and you saw Schwarzenegger in here, you as an audience member goes, he's the bad one.
Yeah, of course.
You've never seen a flip like this before.
Right.
You would that would have been on some Game of Thrones level swerving if you just never saw the trailer.
Well, I will say this. There are a lot of people who haven't seen this movie. I know it's hard to believe, but there is potentially people that are going to watch this or hear the podcast that haven't seen this movie yet because they missed it. And so
Please see
people
it.
who are in their 20s right now probably missed some of those early Terminator movies. You're aware of it, but you don't know
And that's
what's up.
unfortunate because they might have saw the later ones and might have went, I don't want this.
T2 is such a icon,
Dude.
man. It just do you guys remember how long it was in theaters? Because look, we're getting away from actually talking about the movie because the movie is so prolific, the movie is so good that it has so much effect on everything around it. It's almost like redundant to talk about the actual movie itself.
Because what it did to the ether, man, it changed everything.
This is how good the movie is. I'll tell you the one fault I found in it. When I went back because I watched it a few weeks ago, I watched it again in prep for this. I'm like, all right, let's break this thing apart. There's a moment where the kid in the movie is sitting with the Terminator after the mom leaves to go kill Miles Dyson.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he's looking at, she carves "no fate" on the table. He's like, no fate, but what you make. And then he says a line that makes no sense. And then he says the story about no fate. The line that made no sense actually is a transition line as an actor that he missed the opportunity to connect the thoughts. So he didn't understand what he was saying. He was an actor saying a line in that moment, but that line actually had great context for the thing he was about to say.
Right.
But if you watch it, he was just getting the words out. That's my fault with the movie right there. That was it.
That was it.
And that's a small thing, but that goes to how great the movie is. But you're right. And also Edward Furlong, like heavy lifting for this child freaking
killed it.
What's very interesting about this movie, I started peeling back the themes of it.
Mm.
And the theme outside of the obvious ones is also like, man can't change anything. Terminator, Reese went back in time in part 1 to stop the Terminator from killing Sarah Connor so John can be born and lead the resistance in the future. It was never to stop Judgment Day. Judgment Day was supposed to come. So then Sarah Connor gets herself put in an asylum because she tried to stop Judgment Day. That was never the point. Judgment Day was supposed to come and John Connor is supposed to lead. And most of this movie is them trying to stop something. And if you count the sequels, it eventually has to come. So it's interesting to watch these people not do what the Terminator set out to do, which was let's keep John safe. Let's get him away from danger. And in this whole movie, they're running right into danger, going against the Terminator's own programming. But he has to because John Connor. It's weird that John Connor programmed the Terminator to listen to him at any age.
I think that was like a loophole. I think that it was a loophole that he discovered and he exploited.
Right.
But consider this. This is funny about the no fate but what you make, right? Which oddly gives a sense of we have control over our future, right? There's no future except for the future we choose to make. No fate but what we make. Except for the fact that it's all BS because John Connor doesn't even exist unless Judgment Day happens because his father comes back in time to impregnate his mother.
The paradox.
So it actually reminds me more of if you've seen The Time Traveler's Wife, it deals with time, even though it's out of joint and it's in a circular loop, it's all linear and you can't change anything. You got a time traveler who can't change time.
This is why this paradox is so paradoxical, because in the beginning of time travel, there has to be a beginning. So what's the beginning here? What's the unaltered timeline? Because the only way, like you said, the only way John Connor exists is if there's a resistance for him to send Reese back in time. So what came first? And then even with Judgment Day only happens because Terminator 1 left pieces of himself behind. So if he never went back in time, there'd be no Judgment Day. But if there's no Judgment Day, then he would never need to go back in time and kill John Connor. But if he never went back in time and killed John Connor, then Reese never got set back in time to impregnate his mom to create John Connor.
That's what I'm saying. There is no time traveling at all in this movie.
But
there's just the timeline.
But the paradox here is there's no point A. There's no like where did it start.
That's why I'm saying it's more like the time traveler's wife.
No,
It
time
all
traveler's
just
wife
is.
still has a beginning.
No,
There was still
not really, because if you look at the time traveler's wife, and this is big spoiler alert for that content, there are scenes where the more layers that are peeled off the onion, the more you see the same picture pulled back, pulled back, pulled back, but it was always the same. And so it's like Henry is always there, and there are thousands of Henrys there
but he
experiencing
still
the
had
same.
a first time he tried time. There was still a first time. And in this, they do change the time. They do change the timeline.
Well, but you never see the Terminator movies when you look at all of them on the timeline. They never actually go back and double over a timeline they've
The
already
fact
been on.
that John Connor got born by his dad from the future means they changed the timeline.
No, it means that was always the timeline because John Connor existed in the future that sent his dad back in the first
But
place.
they needed time travel for him to even be born, which means they changed something. Originally, they had to have time travel for John to even exist, which means they altered the present. If you never went back in time, you would have never got her pregnant. Therefore, you altered the timeline when you impregnated Sarah Connor.
Here's what I'm
Because
saying.
you're not born in this timeline.
Yes, but here's what I'm saying. There's only one line in this movie, and it just
No,
is.
it can't be. Because
Well,
there
then,
has to be a time.
but then paradoxically, back to use
It's a
paradoxically, John
paradox.
Connor never existed in the future where John Connor was supposed to lead the resistance. It was never John Connor.
Right. So what happened? So at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, when he goes down with the thumbs up, John Connor should have disappeared.
Because then they would have lost the reason to send Reese back in time because there's no Judgment Day.
There's no Skynet.
No. The first time, here's what I'm saying. Sarah Connor actually got married to a guy named JoJo Binks, and they had John Connor. When Kyle Reese came back, he intercepted the timeline and got Sarah Connor impregnant with someone who she thought was supposed to be John Connor, but wasn't originally. Now, that John Connor that she had with this guy instead of the other guy was never going to lead the resistance.
What the hell did you just say?
I don't know. He's just making stuff. Here's the thing, Dan. This is why
did it derail?
No, because it's when you see a paradox, there is no logic. It doesn't make sense because time they almost overlap themselves. And like Chris said,
ladies and gentlemen, is why it's a paradox.
And since they were able to stop Skynet, we know that they can change time. So
but
it's
they did not stop Skynet.
They changed when it happens. They prolonged it.
Actually, they didn't.
Yeah, if we're counting the last Terminator movie as a direct sequel, which James Cameron did, then that means the world didn't go down.
That's true.
In 1997 or 90, like the Russia didn't send nukes. They didn't send nukes. So they changed the future. So if they change the future, that means they stop Judgment Day. And like Chris said, if you stop Judgment Day, then John Connor doesn't need to lead the resistance.
Hang on, though.
Therefore, he doesn't send Reese back in time.
But this is the problem. But this is the problem. This is the problem now. The first two movies operate as a paradoxical film, given the nature that things just are the way they are because they need to be that way. Regardless of the sequence of time, this loop of time is set. It's a set thing. The problem with the third movie and then the last one that came out is they actually change the timeline. Now it's telling you that timeline's changed. So the second Kyle Reese came back and impregnated Sarah Connor with John Connor, the movie doesn't make sense because it should have been someone else.
That's why I disagree with you. The fact that they had to go back in time to kill her and then save her means you're interfering with a timeline. Because you have to go back and kill her. So
I think you have
from
to
the beginning they
movie,
interfered with the timeline.
You have to look at this movie without looking at anything after this. I think this movie everything after this was just really, really muddied up the waters and muddied up whatever little logic we're trying to analyze.
I think you're right. Because these two movies alone actually make sense with the logic that time, regardless of how it happens, is a set thing. And so the things were all predestined John Connor was never going to lead a resistance if his mother never met Kyle Reese and wasn't in that setting to raise John up to be prepared to lead a resistance. So all these things actually had to happen in the sequence they happened. Thus, time was never derailed. It just was set.
Right. But since you're doing time travel and someone goes back in time, and they're going back in time to a time they weren't in. And if they weren't in it, then that time would have played out without them. So they went back and interfered, creating a new timeline. So my thing is, I wonder what the original timeline was with no interference. She's a waitress in this diner. What would have been Sarah Connor's life had? It's interesting.
But this is what I'm saying. That actually never existed.
It had to have.
It didn't.
It had to have.
It didn't.
Paradox. Paradox.
All right. So moving past the issue of time,
but that's how you know there's a paradox when we can argue about this and there's no answer because there isn't one. It's this cacophony.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, doesn't make sense because the only way you can get time travel is if the T-800 went back in time. So if the T-800 can't go back in time, how is there going to be time travel? Because they got the technology from T-800 to make the T-800s, to make the time machines.
Paradox.
It's a mess.
It's like Back to the Future. You go back in time and you change your dad into a cool guy.
Well, hang on. Here's what also doesn't make sense. Miles Dyson talks about he was already working on these things, but these ideas. But the second he found the hand and the computer chip, it fast tracked his process.
Mm-hmm.
But
are you talking about this computer chip?
I'm talking about that computer chip.
What are you trying to Skynet? We're all gonna be hooked up.
This was gonna be my collector's corner. I made a bunch of Terminator stuff on the 3D printer, and I had this really cool filament.
Shouldn't it have a chip missing?
Nice. This is the complete one.
Nice.
There's one that has the missing broken one like that.
Dang, Chris, you had like no other opportunity to show us that.
Nope.
Like
that was the time. That was the moment I set you up for it. So, but he talks about how that helped expedite his work, which also doesn't make sense because his work being expedited then put Judgment Day at the proper point on the timeline.
Exactly.
Paradox. So it didn't really if it had expedited it based off the original timeline, it would have been in like 2000. It would have been in 1992 instead of 1997. You know what I mean? So the timeline was set. Before time travel ever happened, time travel was a part of the timeline, thus setting the timeline. There was no other timeline loop. They never actually went back in time, changing the timeline.
I'm saying
completing the timeline.
I'm saying it's not a loop. You're watching these movies changing. They're changing their future as they're going.
It doesn't make sense that way.
It doesn't make sense your way. That it's just a fixed loop because it's not a loop because they changed it. All right,
so moving past the issue of time.
It's not a loop.
Yes.
We have to move past the issue of time now.
You jump back in.
Well, because he showed the computer chip.
Yeah.
Well, it was also one more bit of evidence that didn't support the idea that the timeline was altered. Just the timeline was supported. There's almost nothing that supports evidence as to an altered timeline. There's only evidence that supports the timeline.
Because the dates change. That means it was
not
altered.
In the first two movies. They don't.
Judgment Day doesn't happen. Judgment Day doesn't happen.
We never get to that point in time.
Yeah, we don't get to that point actually in the second movie.
So Terminator 1 and 2, if you look at this series of events, they only support the idea that the timeline is completed. They don't support the idea that the timeline is altered.
I don't know if I agree with that.
If you look at the plot.
We'll have to see about that. We'll come back to you guys on that. We'll see. We'll see.
I certainly hope so.
Because I don't think you're correct. I don't think it's a fixed loop.
Ooh, yes, please go back and look at that.
If it's a fixed loop, then these movies are terrible. Because then it means it doesn't matter what anyone does.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why that's why the irony of No Fate But What You Make is ironic. Because they're stuck in something where they actually have no control. At least in the first two films. Everything after T2, they alter the timeline 100%. Everything before and during T2, they're just completing the timeline. So it's Miles Dyson should have pumped that out before 1997, if what he said was true, it expedited his work, but it didn't. It just completed the timeline.
We'll have to get back to it. Rich and Chris are fading.
Okay, all right. Let's keep them pushing.
So now let's talk about the action. Yo, this joint is sick.
What?
The practical effects are dope, man.
You know what I noticed in watching this time that I never noticed before? So you know when they're with Miles Dyson, they're about to blow up Cyber9 Systems, all the police show up, T-1000 jumps in the helicopter, and he's shooting. Did you know he has 3 hands? He has 2 hands unloading, and a third hand comes out of nowhere? How come we never saw that ever in the
Smart.
Yes.
And it's crazy to me, like, we have all these Fast and Furious movies come out, all those movies where they use effects to kind of heighten the world. Here, I had a truck and a helicopter following it on the highway, and I was on the edge of my seat because it was real. Because when that helicopter had to go over that overpass, and it just like that really happened. He might have hit that overpass. Ah, man, chef's kiss. And it took its time. It had character development. You cared about the characters. Dude, this is a solid freaking film, man. Miles Dyson was all of that was good. That's how when I saw it, that's how you die. It reminded me of Dark Knight Rises when homegirl when she died at the end, and I'm like, that's not how you die. Freaking Joe Morton, man. Miles Dyson, that's how you die.
I mean, just an acting lesson watching him go through it.
To live, that's how you die.
Yeah.
Trying to breathe because you can't breathe.
Yeah.
What he did was iconic in that scene.
Look, all I had to do is make the noise. You guys, everyone knows what I'm telling you. This movie has so many moments that when you take it, there's so many moments that are ingrained in our culture and the things that we say and the things that we do that it's almost weird to watch it now and see it all in one place. Right? Like you watch it, like this is where this is where this came from. Oh, this is where that came from. And it's just like
that's why when we were talking about Black Adam, the first thing I associated with the film was the character dynamic between Schwarzenegger and the kid. I was like
100%.
Absolutely. I wish they could have leaned more into that in Black Adam if they wanted to, for my taste.
Well, but where it didn't work in Black Adam for me is they were leaning into the jokes, where in T2, he just took it as a matter of fact because he didn't get it.
Right.
There's some interesting things about this is where I think, like he says, just say I'll be back. Some of the jokes don't really make sense to me. Don't kill anyone. Why? Like you have data. You know the law. You know data. You can interpret human behavior. The why is funny, but like I don't see him asking why. I don't know. Tell me. But it's a great moment.
But I'm a Terminator.
What is that coming out of your eyes?
Yeah.
Tears? So complex mathematics.
You don't understand crying.
I now know why you cry.
It's a great moment, but it doesn't make sense. But that's James Cameron. It's like it doesn't have to make sense for it to hit you.
But it works.
That's a great storyteller. It doesn't have to make literal sense for it to impact you. And that hits. But I was sitting there like, that doesn't make sense. But I feel what you want me to feel. I feel what you want me to feel. But why don't you know what tears are? I'm concerned. But it was a beautiful moment.
Also, what worked about that movie is it actually did set up the logic of the last Terminator movie that came out with Schwarzenegger and had Hamilton came back in it, because he talks about how the machine is designed to learn and advance over time and age. So it made sense that he was coming back as an older looking, worn out Terminator.
In Terminator Genesis, which I didn't care for, you see the Terminator that's been left there for like 30 years, so they can justify why Arnold's still playing it. And he's way more human, but it makes sense because over his time on Earth, he just naturally adapted more human qualities. Of course, they make too much of it a joke. What I love too is, like they said in the beginning, that the T-1000 is a prototype.
Right.
Because there's things about him that it's like he should be killing all y'all. Why does that shotgun to the head slow him down for so long? Why do those bullets slow him down for so long? Because he's a prototype. He's not even, at least Arnold's version's a finished product. You're
Right.
more advanced, but you still got you're a little wonky.
That's funny. They rushed him off the assembly line.
Yeah.
And the other robots were begging the boss, just give me another week to get it right. And what's the difference? It's time travel anyway. What's the difference?
Gonna be the most advanced thing there.
Yeah.
Wait,
What's the difference?
when it comes to time
so
travel,
funny.
infinite amount of time, why are you sending your prototype? Why not just wait?
And
it matters.
Wait, I'm sorry. Here's the thing about T2 that actually doesn't. If you try to assume, all right, if it's not what I'm saying, that the timeline isn't altered, it's only just completed. If it's not that, then none of these movies make sense, because why wouldn't you just send that Terminator even further back to go take out Reese and the girl? Prototype or not, he would have ate their lunch.
Yeah, that's what it doesn't make sense.
So then this movie doesn't hold up. It's a piece of trash. Unless they're completing the timeline.
But even if they're completing the timeline, why still not send your liquid metal dude?
I mean, if you're completely, why don't you just go and kill like their grandfather, when no one's going to care about, or something that you'll change them so that they never exist? Like,
well,
you can,
but because they talk about that because they only have a certain amount of information that was left after the blast, so they had to piece the best they could with the information.
So you send a Terminator back in time to kill Sarah Connor, and untrained, unskilled, unknowing Sarah Connor thwarts your machine. So you're going to send another machine back when she's had 10 years of being. Why not just send that liquid metal dude right back to the 80s?
Right, exactly.
Finish the job. Loop or no loop, that still doesn't make sense.
The movie does not hold up unless, and I've said it like 17 times in this episode, unless they are simply completing the timeline.
A fixed loop is cheap, though. That's cheap.
But it's the only thing that is actually supported in these films.
That's how the internet feels about Jack.
Hold on, he's still here. There he is. We thought you were just dropping the mic.
I think you guys did that on purpose. Yeah. I'll be quiet. at this point, please. Other people.
But basically, all these now this is why it's a fantastic movie. I don't care what the time travel is, loop, no loop. At the end of the day, you're going to ask these questions. You can poke holes in its logic, but it's so good. It doesn't even matter.
Oh, man.
What it delivers doesn't hinge upon whether the time travel makes sense or not.
Do you know they had 2 different endings for the film? They shot 2 different endings.
Yeah. The other one's a little bit, I don't know, the other one's Judgment Day, right?
No.
What's the other ending?
The original ending for the film, and they field tested this with audience members before Cameron chose the ending. The other ending they shot for this film was actually Linda Hamilton as an older woman in her house with, a old age makeup, telling the story that she'd been telling the whole film.
So Judgment Day didn't happen.
Judgment Day didn't happen. They fixed the timeline. But what audience liked better was the open road, back with the narration. The time isn't, future isn't set. And so that's the ending they actually put. But somewhere in film canisters is this movie actually resolved.
I think you can see that ending online. Now that you talk about it, I feel like I've seen it before.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ending, I had to jump in my 4-year-old tell him, no, there's more movies. He's coming back. Because I saw the tears beginning to well up when he realized T-800 was about to get melted. He's like, "Why, Daddy? He's the good guy." No. He goes back. Oh, okay.
And I have to say, because it's for those of who've seen this movie 30 years ago, it's just common, but it's not common to take your Freddy Krueger from the first movie and make him the hero in the second one. That is not common to take the guy that terrified you, because the first one was much more of a horror film than this was. Yep. And you made him you empathize and you cry when he dies. That's masterful storytelling. We take it for granted because we grew up with this. It just feels normal, but this is not normal. Can you imagine seeing this for the first time as an adult in the 90s?
The first film, and gave him humanity and heart in a way where you're crying over a robot completing his objective.
and took the damsel in distress from the first one and turned her into a freaking warrior in the second one.
She's a freaking
James
Amazon.
Cameron. And that's why when you ask
do a
me
sequel.
when you asked me who I'd like to see direct a Superman movie, I said James Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
This guy knows how to storytell.
Yeah.
And he's not going to kill Jimmy Olsen off in the first scene.
No, he won't. Especially with Leo acting.
Yeah,
If anyone can, James Cameron can get Leo. We know.
Age.
Dude, it's just amazing, and this the reason why this is the best sequel ever made is because
Whoa. Is it the best sequel ever made?
Give me another one, man.
This sequel trumps. It's first of all, it's way better than the Terminator, and it
is better than the first one.
I mean,
what? Who has a better follow up than this?
Nobody.
This is the best sequel ever made.
And it's not like
this might be the best.
It's not like part one was two movies in one and they split it in half. No, this is its own thing, its own tone, its own
and it
vibe.
Stands alone. This movie stands alone, even if you haven't seen the first one. If you have seen the first one, it's just everything leading up to the hospital scene is so much richer.
Yes. But it's still good if you didn't.
Right.
But it stands alone if you haven't.
And that's why this is freaking amazing.
If anyone listening to this or watching this is sitting here wondering because we really haven't spoken much about the movie or the plot of the movie specifically, but if you haven't seen Terminator 2, T2, I highly recommend watching that movie. It actually does stand up.
Just love yourself a little bit more.
Yeah.
And watch this movie.
Are you okay?
Are you okay? Go watch Terminator 2.
You got to give the benefit of the doubt. Some people might have missed it because they aged out, Like you maybe haven't seen Casablanca or One of the Greats, And so if you haven't seen Citizen Kane...
Some people haven't seen Blackula.
Exactly.
None of you guys have seen Blackula? Jackula from the 1970s?
No, I'm not.
Really? Some people haven't seen Top Gun, so...
Some people still won't see Top Gun.
Exactly.
Well, why are you fist to the air on that one? I don't understand. Anyways, the point is, there are some great movies out there that simply because of the nature of when we're born into our own timeline, we may have missed along the way. This is one of those movies where if you missed along the way simply because of the nature of where you plopped out onto your timeline, go back and pick this one up. It's worth the watch. You'll be glad you did.
Absolutely.
Don't even pick it up. If you got Showtime watching on Showtime. Actually, no. Was it Showtime?
HBO Max.
HBO Max, yes. You can watch Terminator on Showtime, but Terminator 2, HBO Max. Just watch it.
And if you want something really cool, watch Terminator 1 and 2 as if it's the prequel to The Matrix. It's going to blow your mind.
Yep. It will.
When you think about Skynet taking over, then like 100 years after the whole fight, the machines win and use human beings as batteries so they can survive. Watch Terminator as a prequel to The Matrix. It'll blow your mind.
Really kind of is, actually.
Then watch John Wick like it's Neo's simulation. This is all your hope. John Wick doesn't die. It's just like a simulation that Neo's stuck in. The dog is the spoon. There's no...
Wow, the dog is the spoon.
The dog is the spoon.
But that means there is no dog. But there is no dog.
There is no dog.
Wow, he's just been trying to get a spoon the whole movie.
I think our conversation leads to how good this movie is, right? We're talking about pop culture. We're talking about time paradoxes. Well, you're right, Jack. We're not talking about the movie because the movie's just so damn good. Just watch the movie. The movie's so damn good. I don't even want to talk about the plot and stuff like that because it's just so damn good. Go watch it, enjoy it yourself, and then we'll talk about all the ancillary stuff that goes around it because this movie holds up. This movie is amazing.
This movie holds up more than I think any other retro we've ever done. This movie holds up infinite. It more than holds up. It just is.
Even the CGI, which is dated at this point, it's wickedly dated. It works for the villain to look that way.
Yeah.
Like, even it not holding up actually holds up. That's what's crazy about it.
And you still haven't seen that specific type of CGI. Like, we don't get liquid metal villains too much. Like, it's still unique to this movie.
Yeah.
So good. So I guess do we all agree? Do we all Rich, you haven't said too much. Do you like this movie? Do you think it holds up?
I enjoyed the movie. I enjoy watching it. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it. I was just enthralled with you guys trying to make sense out of fake made up stuff.
Made up imaginary hardcore made
How
up
dare
imaginary
you
stuff.
argue these facts that we made up?
Yeah, you're right. He's
trying
right.
trying to discuss like what came first, the chicken or the egg. Pretty
What
much
did come first, Rich? What did come
I don't
first?
know. They both tasty though.
Ooh,
He's not wrong about that.
Especially when they're fried, Rich.
Well on that.
Hey.
Both. Wow. Well, guys, I if you couldn't tell, we think this movie more than holds up. We're saying it's a necessary watch for those who haven't watched it. So, and if you've watched it, go watch it again. You're going to see some really amazing things in there you may not have seen the first time or the second time or the third time or the fifth time or the millionth time. But that is our show. Make sure you,
You're not going to rate it?
Oh.
I mean,
yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
I guess we could put it to a public vote.
No. Who's going to be the jerk that gives this the same rating it gave Black Adam?
Look, I addressed this in a reel on our Instagram. If you guys don't follow us on Instagram, follow 3 Brothers and a Shot of Milk. And I explained my rating system
to the
depth.
So I'll give you the short end of that. He bases it off of how he feels in the moment.
It's true.
What if you have like diarrhea and you watch it?
It doesn't matter. It's how he feels in the moment. That's how Chris rates his movie.
Well, I don't judge my movie by my bowel movements.
Or like, what if you have my stomach hurts? I'm not having a good time. I hate this. Matrix gets of 2. Why? Man, I have some diarrhea when I watch
crap.
This. All right, what do you rate this, guys?
This movie's a 10, man. This movie's T2. I lived this. I had the toys. I had the bioflesh regenerator. I had everything.
Oh, you did. I remember that. You had the bioflesh. I remember
it never worked that well, but I still had it. So
it did not work like the commercials.
No, it didn't. So you're supposed to. You had the skeleton, and you press this plunger, and it puts this goo up, and it's supposed to dry. And it's supposed to be like skin. But the cool thing was on the commercial when they fought, it like came off like in the movie. So you can have a guy that's like the skin's ripped off, and you can see the thing. That thing never worked, man.
The fact they sold that to children, even playing, his skin falls off as he's in fights. We were built different back then.
We were.
Chris, you give it a 10. Rich, what do you give it?
I'm gonna give it an 8. It's an 8. It's a solid rating. We talking about?
It's T2, bro.
8?
It's T2. Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8. It's an 8. What? It's above average. What you talking about? It's an 8. 8's good.
Just to say Terminator 2 Judgment is above average.
Yeah, it's above average.
Wow.
8.
Man.
8. It's 80. 80%. I enjoy
it. Jack with a...
Well, I don't agree with the 8. But I don't know that I can call it a 10. But I will
those
say
guys that don't like to give out 10s.
But this is an easy 9.
Yeah, I respect that.
This is an easy 9.
For Jack's rating system, that's amazing.
That's true.
Yours, Chris?
Not so it's much. The first 10 he's given out. This is his first 10. It might be my first 9.
First 10? Yeah, I never gave a 10 to anything else. I've given 9s, 8s, but never 10.
That's right. I don't think I've given a 9 to anything. So
no,
that's fair. Right. I'm giving this bad boy a 10. It's a 10. Nothing. What's better than this? Equal to
9.75, 9.5, 9.75.
I say you got a lot of equal to movies, but I don't know what's better than this.
9.25. 9.25. That's not bad.
Not a bad rating.
It's like a solid 9.
Solid 9.
Solid 9.
She said.
All right, I'm so happy.
I was underprepared for that.
I hope you guys enjoyed this talk, man. And this was a good one, man. We went in without giving much away. So if you haven't seen it, you can definitely check it out. We also got our playlist. Check out our other reviews. Check out our unboxings. Check out our Chris's toy hunts. Check out Jack going over his awesome combo collection, man. We got so much content. Check out our Instagram, our TikTok. We're on social media all day, every day. Man, we got a podcast link in the description below. We talk like this, but even more about more geek stuff. Blow your freaking mind every single week. Haven't missed a week, have we, gentlemen?
No.
Never ever.
Not collectively.
Not collectively.
Not collectively. We'll be back. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Peace.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to Three Brothers and a Shot of Milk.